afternoon. Today's lesson is on trumpet. The one thing you're going to notice today is I have kind of a unique looking trumpet here. I forgot my trumpets at home, so I'm using one of the ones I had sitting at here. This is called a P trumpet, which is a plastic trumpet. Yeah, okay on how they work. I wouldn't worry about going out and getting one right away, but they're kind of cool. But today's video, I'm going to just be using this. It holds exactly the same, sounds pretty much exactly the same. So all the stuff I'm going to show you works just fine on this to your trumpet. So, all right. So if you have not watched the first video yet on how to take your trumpet out and put it together, you'll want to check that out first before you get going on this one. This lesson is going to be on page 5 in your Sound Innovations book. So you'll want to make sure that you have your book out and opened up to page 5 and you have your trumpet out and put all together. Again, remember, when you put your mouthpiece in, don't pop it in. Just set it in and give it a little turn. And that'll make sure it stays in nice and well. I'm going to get my tuning slide out just a little bit. There we go. Okay, I'm going to set the trumpet down for just a moment, because we have a few things on page 5 that we want to look at first. We've gone over a few of these things in band class, but I want to make sure everything's covered in the video. The first thing you're going to see at the top is your treble clef, also known as G clef. Right there. That is your treble clef. And if you notice, the reason they call it G clef, if you remember, the saying for the line notes is Ernie gave Bert dead frogs. And you'll notice Ernie gave Bert dead frogs. Those are your different notes. And that little twisty curl in the G clef right there goes around that G line, which is why they call it the G clef. Let's get all that erased. So that's the first thing you're going to see. You will always see that as a trumpet player. The next thing you're going to see is what's called your time signature. It looks like the little fraction number, 4-4. The top number tells you how many, the bottom number tells you of what. So when you see 4 on the top, that tells you there is 4, but you need to know 4 of what. Whenever you see a 4 on the bottom, that means quarter notes. So there are 4 quarter notes in every measure, or 4 beats in every single measure. That is called your meter, or your time signature. If we look over to the right-hand side, we're going to see a couple more things. You still see your treble clef and you see your time signature, but now you see a couple of new things. The first you see a whole note. A whole note gets 4 beats. There's a counting system that you'll see below a lot of these. We don't use that. I have another system that we use called Takadimi. Kind of a neat little sounding system, but it helps you in your counting of rhythms, and I find it makes it much, much easier. So you're going to kind of ignore the counting, but it is good to know, and you need to know how long each note value is. So a whole note, which is a circular note with no stem, gets 4 beats. The one you see next to it over here looks like a little bar, and you'll see it looks like a little hole in the line. It doesn't sit on top of the line, it sits just below the line. That is called a whole rest. That means you rest for 4 beats, and you're going to say the word rest 4 times. Rest, 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 rest. So those are the couple things you need to know at the top of the page. Now I need to show you how to figure out your fingerings, knowing for which note when you push which valves. What you need to remember is in that previous video, the valve closest to you is your first valve. The valve in the middle is your second valve, and the valve furthest away from you is your third valve. Below the note E here in your book, you're going to see these 3 circles. That's your valves. Just like I told you, that first circle is your first valve, second one is your second, and the third one is your third. If it is filled in black, that means you push that valve down. If it's empty and not filled in, you leave that finger up. What you'll notice is for note E, the first 2 are filled in black. So that means you push those first 2 valves down and you leave that third one up. Don't leave that finger hanging way out. You want to leave it just on top of the key, because when you start playing fast stuff, you want your fingers right there and ready to move when you need those notes. So for your note E, you're going to push your first and second valve down. Oop, too far back. So we're going to look at our first note E. Now we went over in the previous video how to get a sound out on your trumpet, and that's what you want to go back to. But something I didn't talk about in that first video, because I just wanted you to focus on getting a sound out, is now how to properly start your sound. And you're going to do that by making a T sound. If you've ever had a piece of food or something caught just on the tip of your lip when you're outside and you go to try to get it off by saying a where there's a little mini explosion of air by saying a T sound, that's what you're going to do through this. So I just want you to take no fingers pushed, and I want you to bring the trumpet up and just do 4 of those. That's all you need to do, just 4 of those notes. And that's the sound you want. You'll hear it's a t, 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 t. If you do it the other way, I call that owl tonguing. Not very good to do it that way. And that's kind of how you started your note in the first video I was showing you, by just starting the note with your air. Listen to the difference. You'll kind of hear wham, wham, instead of ta, ta, where that note just starts. It kind of takes a second to get going. And when you start playing faster, it's going to make it really hard. And I call that owl tonguing, whoo, whoo, where you start the note with your air. But listen to me try to play fast with the owl tonguing. I can't go very quickly that way, and it's really tiring. But if I use that T sound, the I can go much faster with very little effort. That wasn't very hard for me to do that. Didn't take much air. So you want to practice getting that ta sound out. Now, if you look down in our first note there, you'll see it is an E, which is 1 and 2, your first and second valve, and it's a whole note, which means you hold it out for 4 beats. Instead of thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to use something a little different. If you notice ta, so we're going to go ta, ah, and that gets your 4 beats. Ta, ah. And if you notice, the first sound I made was a ta sound, the t. So listen to me play a whole note through my trumpet, and you'll kind of hear that a little bit. So you can almost hear the ta. You can hear that a little bit in my sound. As you get better, you can just think it. And that will help you get the note out for the proper length and time. So ta, ah. That'll get you 4 beats. Then when we get to the 4 notes of, the whole note rest, you'll count rest 4 times. Okay, so here we go. Let's try our first note on note E. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a 4-note count off. What you're going to hear me say before you play is I'm going to go 1, 2, ready, go, play. Okay, so here we go. You're going to play right with me. So get your trumpet up and ready to go. Make sure it's not pointed way down and not pointed way up. It's just nice and comfortable, just out and down a little bit. So I'm going to push my first 2 valves down. 1, 2, ready, go. Rest, 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 rest. Rest, 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 rest. And that is the whole line of our first note, E. Now, if you find your note came out a little higher, or now let's start with if it came out too high, you want to make your air slower. Because to play higher, it's just making your air fast. So I want you to make your air really slow. So to play your E, you might be blowing your air far enough where you can feel it way out here. I want you to try to play your E when you can barely feel your air going this far. And that will help you get the E out. Now if you found you went too low, your air is too slow. And all you have to do is make your air a little faster. So to get that low A out, you might have your air barely going this far. So now we need you to speed it up a little bit so it goes about that far. And that'll help help you get your E right at the right spot. So if you're too low, you need to make your air just a little bit faster. If you're too high, you need to make your air a little bit slower. Let's try our first note one more time. 1, 2, ready, go. Rest, 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 rest. Rest, 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 rest. And that's all there is to it. Make sure your note is matching my note. Again, make sure you're not playing higher than my note or lower than my note. You want to be matching my note of E. So your E is valves 1 and 2. Let's go down now to our second note. Our note D, the next line down. What you'll notice is that sits right below the staff. That is our note D, which is, if you look at the fingerings, the first circle is filled in and the third circle is filled in and the second circle is not. So you're only pushing your first valve down and your third valve down. Make sure when you push those down, sometimes your second finger might push that second valve down a little bit, so make sure that that valve isn't being pushed down at all, or you're going to get this really weird sound out. So you want to make sure you get those down and not pushing that other one down a little bit. It's the same rhythm that you had in the previous one. So we're going to just go right along. Let me just get that erased from the first one. Get back to that. So here we go. Our second note, note D. So get your first and third valve pushed down. Get the trumpet up. Make sure when we breathe in, we don't raise our shoulders way up. We don't look down. Just nice and relaxed. First and third valve down. Take a nice big breath when I count off. So here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, ready, go. And that is your second note, note D. Again, if you came out too low, this one might be a little harder to get really low, but you might get the low note out. Just make your air a little bit faster. And this one is a little easier to accidentally play a little too high on. So just make sure you match, and if you're going too high, just slow that air down a little bit, and that'll get you right down to that D. Let's try that one more time. So remember, these are whole notes. Get 4 beats each note. Ta, ah, ah, ah. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, ready, go. And that is it for our second note of D. Now we're going to look down to the next line that's called 2-note tango. This is going to switch between your E and your D. What you're going to notice is your fingering for E is your first valve and your second valve. Your fingering for D is your first valve and your third valve. They share a common valve of valve 1. The first valve is used for your E and your D. So when you're switching between the two, don't lift your fingers up between the notes. Keep that first finger down. So I'm going to go E. Instead of lifting up both of them, I'm just going to lift up my second one and then push down my third one. D, E, D, E. I'm just going to switch the valves back and forth instead of going lifting both of them up and down. So when you have a fingering where the same finger is down between multiple notes, keep that finger down. Don't lift it up. Especially when you're getting into really fast things as you get more advanced, it's impossible to play that way. So you want to make sure when you have similar things between two notes back to back, you keep that same fingering down. So here we go. This one, remember, E is on the first line. D sits below the first line. So this is going to start on our E. So here we go. 2-note tango. Get your first 2 valves pushed down. Get the trumpet up and ready to go. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, ready, go. Rest, 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 rest. Rest, 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 rest. Rest, 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 rest. And that takes us through our two-note tango. We're going to try it one more time just to get a little more practice on it. I want to make sure you're playing right along with me. So here we go, two-note tango one more time. Starts on our first and second valve with our note E. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Rest, 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 rest. Rest, 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 rest. Rest, 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 rest. Rest, 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 rest. And that takes you through the two-note tango. I'm going to go down one more line to our third note, which is a note C. You'll notice it sits a little bit lower than your D, and it has a little line going through it. So I'm going to circle it here so you can see it, and you'll see that there's a little line going through it. That means it's your note C. And your note C on trumpet is open. No valves pushed. So if they were going to show it with the circles, that's really badly drawn circles, but you would see 3 open circles, none filled in. So you do not push any valves down for your low C. So here we go, note C. Let's get ready to play it. So get the trumpet up, no valves are pushed, keep your air low, sorry, not your air low, keep your air slow to get that low note to come out. 1, 2, ready, go. Rest, 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 rest. Rest, 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 rest. And that takes you through that one. So that is our third note, note C. Make sure you're getting a nice toss sound to start it, that type of sound, to hold the note out. And whatever room you're playing in, especially on trumpet, I want you to fill that room with your sound. I want you to blow it out. I want you to play with a nice big sound. Whatever room you're playing in, I want you to fill every nook and cranny of that room with your sound. We are going to do some things later that I'm sure your parents are really going to love, where I have you playing almost as loud as humanly possible. But we will get into those later. And also make sure every time you start playing, I want you to start with a little mouthpiece buzzing. The same exercises we were working on in a previous video where I talked about how to make your first sound and get going on the trumpet. You want to keep practicing those. In the weeks coming, I'm going to have you try some different things with your mouthpiece buzzing that'll help you out even more. That will get you going on page 5. I want you working on all lines on page 5. Do not go on to the next page. We got to get good at this page before we move on. I know sometimes it's easy to get really excited to move on, but I really need you to get good at these 3 notes. Each page builds on the one before it, so if you don't do very well and you struggle with something on one of the previous pages, when you get to a page further in that makes it known that you can already do those things, it's going to be really, really tough for you. So do not move on until you get through page 5 and get really good at it. Next week we'll be starting on page 6. So get some good practice in this week. Again, if you have any questions, let me know in band rehearsal or send me an email. Either way, whatever it is, if you need some extra help, I'm here to help you out as best I can through email and through band time. I will see you all next week.